So The Marvels is the sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel. Although it's a sequel to a lot of stuff. Like, this is probably one of the first films I would say within the Marvel Cinematic Universe where it feels like you have to do your homework here. Like, before with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it used to be just, if you pay attention to the comics and if you pay attention to all the different TV shows, there'd be little bonuses and Easter eggs in there for you. So they weren't required to understand the films, but they were, they were like a little extra something. Like, if you watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was a little something for you in there while you were watching, like Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: Civil War. You were rewarded a little bit like that. You weren't required to. You could still enjoy those films without watching that show, but yeah, that's the way it went. Unfortunately, it's kind of it's getting to a point now that we have all these like Marvel TV shows that are populating Disney Plus now. It feels like you need to do homework just to understand what's going on in the Marvels. And keep in mind, that's just to understand what is happening within this film. Not to like appreciate the Easter eggs, not to appreciate the plot, but you really do have to be boned up on not just like Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame, but also Miss Marvel and WandaVision and more or less Secret Invasion. Like, not a lot even happened in Secret Invasion, but if you want to figure out what's going on with Nick Fury, you're probably going to have to watch that as well, because this is a film that hits the ground running hard. Like, if you watched Miss Marvel, like, that ended on like a big cliffhanger when Kamala Khan with her magical bracelet just got flung into her closet and just, switched places with Captain Marvel, and it's like, oh, what's going on here? And the film picks up immediately from where that left off. So if you haven't been keeping up with Miss Marvel, you do not get an introduction to that. Similarly, if you haven't been keeping up with WandaVision, you are given no introduction for Monica Rambeau. She's immediately working with Saber, and if you did not watch Spider-Man Far From Home and you haven't been catching up with what Nick Fury's been doing, you will not get an introduction to Saber either. It's just like, they're all here and they expect you to be caught up with all of it. But even on that level, because I have watched all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and I have watched all the shows, but even on that level, it's just chaotic. Like, that first act is just, it's just like, it hits the ground running hard. It doesn't spend any time introducing the characters, getting you used to them. Like, oh, it's, if you've only watched the movies, it's been a while since we've seen Carol Danvers, since the first Captain Marvel film and Avengers Endgame. You've seen little glimpses of her in like Miss Marvel and stuff like that, but you want to get you want to get used to like Brie Larson being back into this role, because like there is a lot more for her to do in this film. So you'd like to get to just get a little bit more acquainted with her. You don't get that time. You don't even get that time to appreciate Iman. Well, actually, now that I think about it more, like Kamala Khan playing, who's Miss Marvel, played by Iman Vellani, who does a great job. Like, she does exactly what you'd expect her to do in this film, which is that she's supposed to be the enthusiastic fangirl. She can't wait to work with her hero, Captain Marvel, and it's so exciting, and she gets to go on a space adventure, and she has all this enthusiasm, and I love her on that degree, but it's like you don't get time to get used to her all that much. Like, you get a little bit of introduction about, what her drive is, how she idolizes Captain Marvel and how she uses her powers more or less. You get a brief introduction. You get more of that than you do with Monica Rambeau, played by Teyonah Parris, who only kind of briefly mentions that she got her powers from WandaVision, and you just have to keep up. And you have to keep up fast, because the big development they show here is that all three of these superheroes have their powers merging, where they're like switching places with each other, and they've got to figure it out while there's like another Kree attack going on the Earth at the same time. And it's an attack that you're not really informed all that much about. Like, you're giving a brief glimpse of how this is starting, but you don't have the whole story. And that would be, it would be fine if like, you could, if you could gel with like the chemistry and kind of go with the flow and kind of be more intrigued to see where this goes. But just with how like the first act is messy with all its technobabble, and it's chaotically edited, where like you really have to be paying close attention just to appreciate the fight scenes, because the fight scenes where the three superheroes are all using their powers and they're all switching between different locations where they are. It's a neat idea in theory, but like like I said, the way it's edited, it's just so all over the place that it's hard to keep up with what is going on here. That it launches you straight into the deep end. Like, if you haven't been caught up on all of Marvel at this point, like, there's no introduction here. There's no slowing down to get everyone used to it, get you back into the flow, just kind of, get used to Captain Marvel again. You're flung right into it immediately. And it wouldn't bother me so much if there was something more intriguing to this story. Unfortunately, it's just kind of a really standard superhero plot of like trying to save Earth and save other planets from being obliterated by another villain who is more or less just kind of replicating the same kind of like drive and even the same weaponry as Ronan the Accuser, from like Guardians of the Galaxy and for his brief appearance of trying to assault Earth in Captain Marvel. So the villain you have this time is Dar-Ben, played by Zawe Ashton, and she is not given much time to appreciate her as a villain. Like, she has the drive, she has the motivation, she has a reason to want to attack Captain Marvel and obliterate all these planets, but we don't get to spend that much time with her. And this is the biggest problem as with the film as a whole, is that it's roughly 100 minutes, which is like really, 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 really tight for a Marvel film. Like, usually I expect, like, on the low end of Marvel films to be 2 hours, and this one is under 2 hours, which would be fine. I would be cool with that, especially since, like, this is a fairly standard superhero plot that I don't think so much it would hinder a film like this if there was some breathing room. Like, I mean, the plot's fairly standard. It's not all that interesting. They have to stop another villain from blowing up the galaxy. So it would be fine if they had lots of detours to, just have more chemistry between Carol and Monica and Kamala, and just visiting other planets and having sci-fi hijinks and some cool fights. The way, if they had room to build that up, that could actually make for a really fun film. And to the Marvel's credit, there are some interesting asides where the film actually does start to find a little bit of its groove and actually become fun. Like, at one point in their investigation, they have to visit a planet where everyone speaks in musical numbers, and it's run by this prince played by Park Seo-joon. And it's just like the way that he switches between musical numbers and speaking normally is just, it's silly, but it's also like charming, and it's kind of fun. And for no reason at all, like, characters will just like pop up in like, decadent royalty dresses and stuff like that, just royal gowns, and it's bizarre, and the characters recognize that it's silly and weird, but they go with it. And at that point, I was kind of getting invested. I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of digging where this is going here. Unfortunately, it lasts for, for a very brief window of time, and then it goes back to the plot about, they got to stop Dar-Ben again from, obliterating this planet, and conquering the galaxy. It's like, okay, it's the standard plot again. But then there'd actually be some decent chemistry. Like, I like the way how Monica is kind of having some issues with being separated from Carol for so long. Like, within the first Captain Marvel film, she was a child, so having been absent for so long, there's this sense of like, I needed you here, or, like, I wanted a sense of family, and you weren't there. And also, like, there's a whole angle with Carol trying to come to terms with what she was doing out in the galaxy, and how she has regrets about kind of sort of instigating like civil war between planets. And then like, another aspect that I thought they would explore, but they don't as much, is, Kamala Khan realizing, what it means to be a superhero, and being just not a lot, but just a little bit disillusioned, where like her fangirling would kind of, take a little bit of a backseat, and she'd have to like grow a little bit more as a character. Which is unfortunate, because most of them she's she's fangirling through the whole thing, which, you know, for the first half of the film, I thought it was fine. It was cute. It was adorable. I liked the way that she, you know, has that kind of audience surrogate angle to her, that, you know, she reacts the way anyone else would react to, you know, like evil aliens and planets blowing up and, you know, alien cats with tentacles. She has those great reactions. But a little bit of her, I think, goes a long way. And by the second act, I was kind of hoping that there would be a little bit more developed with her. And it feels like the film was leaning towards that, to kind of like have that moment where she, you know, gets to speak with Carol, to kind of realize that she's not quite the, you know, like the perfect hero that she imagined in her mind. But it gets sidelined a bit. And like Kamala's fangirling remains like kind of like untainted throughout this. Like, she starts the film loving Captain Marvel and she ends it loving Captain Marvel on pretty much the same level. So at least in terms of being like a bit of a cheerleader for this and giving some enthusiasm to the story, which it could really use it, because it, you know, it could get bogged down a bit too much in pathos and treating the sci-fi action a little bit too seriously. She is like the perfect ingredient for this. The problem is, like, this is a crowded film. There's so much going on, and it's so hard to get into the flow of things and get used to the chemistry and appreciate the weirdness, because there's too much going on. There's too many characters. Like, I haven't even talked about like Nick Fury, who, you know, is present and he helps out. But we don't get as many scenes with him and Carol, which is kind of sad, because in the first Captain Marvel film, I kind of liked the chemistry between Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson. Like, it felt like it was kind of building, and I was kind of looking to see where it would go after that. But they rarely spend any time together. In fact, most of the film is Nick Fury spending time with Kamala Khan's family, who for some reason just come up to Saber just so I guess they can be protected in case, like, you know, any other supervillains come after Kamala's family for whatever reason, which I get, but they keep showing up, and I get the feeling like they were meant to be like comic relief. But, and the thing is, that could work, but there are too many other characters. Like, even up on the Saber space station where they stay for most of the film, there's already 2 other characters we're introduced to up there that more or less kind of act as better comic relief. So between that, and not to mention like the other, like, you know, I won't spoil it here, but like the other cameos that are thrown into this, it's just, you know, at 105 minutes, there is way too much going on, that the scenes that are meant to be like, you know, fun and have chemistry are just kind of like fall flat. And the few moments that are weird and bizarre and kind of fun, like I mentioned, the musical planet, and there's another subplot involving Goose, the alien cat that can like eat people whole with her tentacles. I like what they do with the cat. There's a very funny sequence that they use with her, in terms of how they like have to save people with the cat. But it, like I said, it's the same with Musical Planet. It ends before it can have a lot of fun with that material. And just when you're starting to get used to it, just when I'm starting to have fun with the film and I'm starting to like, okay, they're finding their groove here, this is working, it would go back to the plot about, you know, they got to save the galaxy, and here's this bland villain, and she has her standard motivations, and she's such a forgettable villain too. Like I get her plight, but we spend so little time with her, and she has so, at least from the few scenes that she has so little personality that it's so hard to feel for this character. Like, on paper, she has solid motivations, but like, you know, she's got, like I said, like it's too, the film is too tight and too crowded that like by the final act you're just kind of like, oh, she's kind of gone and kind of like a forgettable element at this point. Not to mention like the ultimate resolve with the film just kind of like falls back on like standard superhero tropes that by the third act of the film, like it pretty much just goes on autopilot for what you would expect for like this type of superhero story, for the way that it would unfold. Not to mention like the whole thing with the Skrulls being thrown into this, and there's relation to the Thor films, and just little bits of like Secret Invasion here and there, and it's just, even if you've watched all of it, it's all tossed together and it doesn't gel well. In fact, there are a lot of moments of character chemistry here that just fall flat, and it's sad to see that, because like all the elements are there. I almost feel like if this film were like 30 or 40 minutes longer and had some of those smaller moments, or had more of those weirder moments with with the musical planet and the alien cats, it could find a good groove. Because I like the way that that Captain Marvel, the first film, unfolded. Because it left enough room for like the chemistry between Carol and Nick Fury, to kind of get them to bond as characters. Here, there's too many characters that it's hard for them for you to feel that chemistry and that energy that would make them be lovable and want you to see what they do next year. With the exception of Kamala Khan, because she's having fun. She's trying to have fun with this as much as she can, and I think for that small goal of her character, she works. But in terms of like Monica coming to terms with her grief and Carol coming to terms with using her powers for good, those arcs kind of fall flat compared to everything else, especially compared to what Kamala Khan is doing in the film. So it's really depressing, because like there are moments that I genuinely enjoyed here. I enjoyed the little asides when they were venturing off to other planets and finding goofy stuff to do with all these weird sci-fi elements, because you want that out of this weird material. It's almost to like a level where you look how like the Marvel TV series have unfolded. I wish that this were a TV series, just because there'd be enough room that you could expand on the characters. That there'd be, I mean, like even at 6 episodes, there'd be way more room to explore the characters. You could have a lot more time to have all these fun asides, and it would just work so much better. But as this tight 105-minute film, it just comes off with just standard tropes and just energy that doesn't work as well as it should, which is really disappointing, because like there are moments that I genuinely loved, but all things considered, The Marvels is a bit of a mess, and a mess that requires you to do homework just to understand what's going on. Not to appreciate it, just to understand. So yeah, I wish I could love The Marvels more, because it has some good elements, it has some great ideas, and it has a great cast. But it's in such a rush to cover so much of this material and just build up to the next Marvel film that it just comes off. It's such a lacking film, especially for one from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which usually finds a decent groove and finds something more to explore in the material. And here, it just feels like a substandard superhero film.